One has to dig a pond to see the frogs jump in.
Like a lot of racers today, my friends and I were always in desire of the newest fads and hot equipment on the racing scene. We couldn't afford it, but still had mild success. Once we got older, though, and got good paying jobs, we went all out on a spending frenzy. Much to our surprise, the new stuff didn't have much effect on our success at all. We learned our lesson the hard way. It's not the equipment that makes the win, it's the knowledge. Once we learned how to use these new pricey gadgets, we discovered that we could have saved a lot of money and frustration if we stuck to the basics. And now we are passing this knowledge on to you. In the next 45 minutes, you'll witness a comprehensive collection of the many facets of racing. Tips will range from the basic to the not-so-basic. Only you can evaluate which ones are best suited to the level of fun and competition you desire. If any of them cause you to brain cramp, stop and go on. Don't dwell on anything until the best time to tackle it comes. The ultimate goal of anything is happiness, isn't it? When you see racers brain cramping over the latest equipment that they can't afford, realize that they are wasting their time. Time that you should use to practice the things that really make a difference. The things that money can't buy. Before you race, you must have a car, and for the novice racer, we strongly suggest the 1/10 scale off-road type. Not only are the cars the most popular, which makes parts and accessories widely available, but they're also the most versatile. Having four-wheel independent suspension gives them the ability to be converted for racing on almost any surface. These cars can be made very competitive on both asphalt oval and dirt oval tracks, as well as what they were built for off-road. When you choose a car, you want to buy one made specifically for racing. In this case, we're looking for four-wheel independent suspension and oil-filled shocks on all corners. We chose the Losi Junior 2 as a good indication of a budget race car. The Associated Team car is an example of a good middle-of-the-line race car, and for a car designed all out specifically for one class, we chose the Custom Works Intimidator. For the truck class, we used the RC10T, and we also used an old-style RC10 in novice class. Other races on our team utilized the Losi JR-XT racing truck and the Losi JR-X Pro racing car. Throughout the video, we will show you how our racers specifically modified their cars for each racing surface, and we'll also show you how well they did in many local and area races throughout the year. Often, the only difference between a fast car and a slow car on the track is not the car at all, but the driver. Many beginning drivers get caught in the trap of blaming their problems upon the car instead of their driving or tuning, and this is a trap we must avoid like the plague. This is especially true in dirt racing, where driving is one of the most important factors to winning. This fact makes dirt racing especially appealing to the underdog racer, since battery packs and motors aren't nearly as critical as they are in oval racing. Even though the asphalt oval tends to be a lot more equipment extensive for the competitive racer, we do suggest it is an excellent way to learn how to drive. Asphalt has three important advantages to the beginning driver. It's a lot easier to find and maintain asphalt tracks. The cars stay a lot cleaner and maintenance is a lot lower, and they're a lot more consistent, which allows the beginner to learn the suspension tuning a lot easier. Most of the racers on our team got started this way by doing what we call parking lot bashing. We took 4 metal plow discs and we'd set them up in a rough oval and race. After a while, we developed the need for more speed and found that traction was a problem. We couldn't get most of the push out of our cars, and if we did set them up to be sensitive to steering, they would oversteer real easy. So then we discovered what some of the local big asphalt racers were doing. They're doing what we call sugar coating. This entails mixing approximately 1 pound of sugar for every gallon of water and spraying or misting it lightly upon the circumference of the track. Depending on the temperature, it will usually dry within about half an hour to 2 hours and leaves a very tacky, sticky surface, which works very well. Garden sprayers work very well for this purpose, and another budget racetrack tip we have discovered is garden hose. Garden hose can be used very effectively to draw the outlines of a track. Remember, the main purpose of these parking lot sessions are to have a lot of fun and learn how to drive, but try to keep all the cars set up equally by using gearing to slow down the fast cars. Remember, the idea is to have fun. The effect of suspension adjustments will cause one of three things to happen: oversteer, understeer, or neutrality. Oversteer occurs when the car is oversensitive to steering input, and usually this will be seen as the rear end of the car kicking out or spinning out completely. Understeer is when the front of the car doesn't have sufficient traction and thus doesn't have enough grip to turn the car. This will be seen as a tendency for the car to push or plow. And neutrality is when all four corners of the car possess equal traction. This is usually the suspension balance of choice, although some drivers will prefer a little bit of push or a little bit of oversteer.
Remember, to get maximum cornering output, you must achieve a balance. Think of car as yin and yang. Front is yin, rear is yang. Or vice versa. It does not matter. Only want same grip on yin as on yang. Too much yin will make yang go crazy. It will not stay on track. Too much yin will be overpowered. Balance is lost and the car will not go where you want it.
The way a car responds in a corner is determined primarily by the front to rear balance. A car with too much front traction in relation to the rear will tend to oversteer, and a car with too much rear traction in relationship to the front will tend to understeer. Be careful not to confuse this with driving. Sometimes, if you use too much power or too much brakes in a corner, you can cause a car to oversteer when it really has a tendency to understeer. Often a car's handling tendencies will change as we go through a corner. To help demonstrate the different changes suspension adjustments will make, we'll break the corner down into three parts, which we will call corner entry, mid-corner, and corner exit. There are two basic elements we will work with to adjust the car's balance, and these are a contact patch and weight transfer. Contact patch is the part of the tire that's in direct physical contact with the ground, and weight transfer is the way the car's weight is transferred through the contact patches as the car goes through a corner. Generally, the more weight that is transferred onto a corner, the more traction that corner will have, but this is not always true. It is possible to get too much weight transferred onto a tire and overload it. There are three basic things that influence contact patch: tire design, the way we set the suspension, and the design of the suspension. There are four things that influence weight transfer: weight and its place on the car, wheel rate, shock rate, which we also call dampening, and the design of the suspension. Wheel rate is the amount of force it takes to move the wheel up a given distance, not including dampening. The most common adjustment we will use to adjust wheel rate is preload. Preload is how far the spring is put into compression by the shock collar. Spring rate also changes wheel rate. Spring rate is how much force it takes to depress the spring a given distance. On most cars, we can vary the leverage arm to influence the dampening in the spring rate. By moving the shock mounting point inwards or outwards, we can give it more or less spring and dampening. Shock rate provides resistance to change or dampening in the suspension movement. It is affected by the leverage arm, the viscosity of the oil in the shock, and temperature, and the size of the path the oil can take around the shock piston. Generally, the more shock or wheel rate we have on any particular corner of the car, the less traction it will provide in proportion to the other corners. The converse is also true. Less spring rate or shock rate usually gives more traction on that particular corner. If all of these terms confuse you, don't worry about it. The idea we are trying to get across is the multitude of adjustments you can make to get better handling out of your car. The manufacturer builds cars as a compromise between the wide variety of drivers and tracks they can be run with. By dialing your car into your driving style and track, you can get huge performance gains while spending little or no dough. If theory gives you a brain cramp, use experimentation to learn tuning. Try an adjustment and see what it does. Even the pros have to practice. As we discussed earlier, wheel rate and dampening rate primarily influence weight transfer, but weight transfer alone doesn't create or change traction without a contact patch gripping the road. Now we'll show you how contact patch can be tuned. Different types of surfaces suit different types of contact patches. Rough, chunky, loose dirt surfaces require lots of tooth. In these cases, a small contact patch angled sharply to the ground usually provides better grip. The angle grips and pushes the loose dirt particles so they don't simply slide into the tire without providing any traction. Smooth, hard surfaces work better with smaller sized treads and a large contact patch flat on the ground. This is why we use foam tires on asphalt. Foam has treads, so to speak. It's made up of very small pits on the face of the tire, so small you usually can't see them. Later, we will better explain how tire choice influences a contact patch, but now we'll talk about suspension's effects on it. Caster and camber both influence the tire's angle in relation to the ground. Caster is designed into a car but can be changed on some designs, and camber is adjusted by tightening or loosening the top link on your suspension. This is negative camber, and this is positive camber. Negative camber increases the bite on the outside tire in a turn, and decreases the bite on the inside tire. Generally, more negative camber will increase traction on an off-road dirt car, and on an asphalt car we use camber primarily to get even tire wear. Caster will cause camber to change as we input steering. Positive caster helps bite the tires into the corner. Positive caster is created by tilting the arc the steering swings rearwards. Notice how the pin is closer at the top of the car. We adjust caster by changing these blocks that the steering arm is mounted on. This chassis comes with 30 degrees worth of kick-up, which combined with a caster block which is tilted forward from this pin 25 degrees gives me a total of 5 degrees worth of caster. Tracks vary between two opposite ends of the spectrum, loose and rough like your average unwatered dirt track, to hard and smooth such as hard packed clay or asphalt. Loose surfaces require caster and camber settings drastically different than smooth hard surfaces. The material that makes up the track is not very solid, so large amounts of bite are required to dig in and grip it. A sharp, distinct contact patch with lots of pressure on it works well, so we use lots of caster and camber. A hard and smooth surface requires lots of contact on the ground. The track is so hard that it is impossible to dig the tire into it, so the amount of tire on the ground is more important than the pressure or angle. Use small amounts of caster and camber to keep the tire flat and the contact patch large. Remember, softer tracks, more caster and camber, and harder tracks, less caster and camber. Another adjustment we can make that primarily affects steering response is toe. Toe can be measured with a tape measure ruler. This is toe in, and this is toe out. Toe out will increase your car's response in corner entry and corner exit. Toe in will decrease your car's response and is a very good adjustment to use for the beginning driver. Sway bars also work well to tune your steering response. In this case, we build a sway bar and associated team car by using a small piece of music wire, which can be bought at most hobby stores, and aileron connectors, which are used in model airplanes. In this case, a sway bar helps resist leaning motions in the car. When the car leans and one arm moves independently of the other, the bar twists. When they move together, the bar pivots in its mount. By tightening up the sway bar, we will cause that end of the car to get less traction. By loosening the sway bar, we can gain more. This is one of the many methods we can use to adjust the car's steering response. You might also try changing your car's weight bias or weight distribution. In this case, we've got a left turn only asphalt car, so we've mounted more of the components on the left side of the car to gain more traction. You might also attempt changing your front to rear balance also. Whenever you make an adjustment of this sort, it can be very useful to quantify it by using a scale or other means. Now that we've shown you suspension tuning basics, I'll give you some examples of specific circumstances and how you should tune your car for them. This car takes the first turn very well and gets set up fine for the first jump. But after the second jump, its nose starts to come down. It took the first jump fine because it was accelerating hard, and this helps to hold the nose up. But as it gets into the final jump, it's topped out and the nose comes down. In most cases in off-road, we have to make a lot of compromises between cornering and jumps. In this case, we'll run stiffer dampening in the front and stiffer springs. This will decrease our steering response, but as you see, we've got plenty. But it will vastly make up for it in increased jump potential. Here, my truck was doing much the same thing, except I was further burdened with a great amount of understeer in the corners. I rectified part of the problem by using throttle to keep the nose high. Often you can use bursts of throttle at the beginning of a jump to help hold your nose up, but as you can see, it didn't always work. The quickest way to set up a truck or a car is often to ask someone that runs one and is successful, so I checked the qualifying sheets and found someone. I went to the guy that qualified highest and caught him when he wasn't busy, and he was more than happy to give me some advice. He suggested running a pin spike rear tire, which was more suited to the hard clay surface of this track, and a more aggressive front tread compound to make up for the heavier spring settings and the heavier shock weight he was running in the front to keep his nose high on jumps. I had suspected this was the thing to do, but wasn't sure whether it would work, and didn't have the time to practice. So I checked with him, and he confirmed my suspicions. I was really curious whether the better front tread design he was using would make up for the understeer that the added shock and spring rate should add. My truck was already understeering quite a bit, and I wondered how much of a problem this would cause for him. The added spring and dampening rate really helped this truck become a lot more consistent through the jumps, and he had to use a lot less driving or throttle to keep his nose high. It did add some understeer though, and this is where his driving skill became apparent. He used brakes upon entry on every corner to load the front tires and cause temporary induced oversteer. This really helped him make the corners even though his truck was set up very stiff, and he still had good ability to go over the jumps consistently. Even though he had really good equipment, the biggest reason this guy is competitive is because of his driving skills. He's extremely smooth, extremely calm, and extremely relaxed, and this is very important. And he didn't place much emphasis on getting absolute speed, but on consistency. He really taught me a lot about driving this track, and it really helped me out. Later, you'll see how we both did.
To learn how to run, you must first learn how to walk.
Your performance equals your potential monster interference.
Definitely.
Definitely, yeah.
When we choose tires, we've got to optimize the tread design for the type of texture we're running on. If we're riding on a really loose track that's got a lot of texture, we want a deep tread to dig into it. If we're riding on a hard surface where the texture is much smaller, we run a smaller tread. In this case, we've got a dirt oval track that's just being broken in before the race. The race will start with the track very, very loose, and by the end of the day, it will become hard packed. In this case, we'll want to change tires, or change the tire itself. Tall tread designs don't work very well on hard packed tracks because they'll roll over and lose their grip. We must modify the tire and cut the tread shorter. We use a pair of side cutter pliers. By cutting them, we make them sharper and shorter, and this makes them more resistant to rolling over. This is a set of Losi X-Pattern tires, which is a very good all-around design and can be modified to work on many different types of tracks. Here we're using the stock tires on my RC10 truck. They work pretty good on this surface, especially after nipping them. And this is a JRX Pro, which we're using X-Pattern backs and stagger fronts. My truck also is used extensively in off-road racing, and here we have a track that's a good medium to medium firm surface. The tires that were supplied with the truck worked sufficiently when they were clipped. As you can see, they would get a little loose at high speeds. The top racer in the class was using pin spike rears and stagger block fronts. And they were very popular in the buggy class also, as were X-Patterns. The pin spike tire is a little more suited for this hard surface. Here we have an asphalt oval, which is the same track converted later on in the week. And this particular surface gets very hard, so to get better traction, we use foam tires. And here we have an asphalt race, and as you know, foam is the tire of choice in asphalt. You can see the trend that develops. The loose surfaces use larger tread, and asphalt, the hardest, uses foam. It's pretty obvious to most people that we need to pick the right kind of tire for the surface, but most people don't realize you need to pick the right kind of tire for the type of traction you need also. Some designs are biased towards side bite or cornering grip, and others are biased towards forward bite or acceleration. Tread running front to rear provides better side bite, and running side to side provides better forward grip. Often we can use these properties to dial an off-road car's cornering ability in without using the suspension. This way we can use the suspension to dial in the jumps and tire choice to dial in cornering. When we're using foam tires on the oval, we can also groove them in the direction that we need to gain the type of traction that we need. Running foam tires on asphalt is a little different since we usually don't have tread on them. On asphalt we primarily pick them due to their hardness or the type of compound that makes them up. Blue is a good medium compound that we use widely on most of our tracks. They range all the way from yellow, which is the softest in TRC's line, all the way to orange, which is rock hard. Most asphalt tracks are in the green and blue range, and dirt ovals are usually always running yellows. The tires are supposed to be round, and that's why we true them and balance them. For a budget tire truer, all you need is assortment of sandpaper, nails, a board, nut and bolt to fit your rim, and a power drill. Make sure the bolt is snug or this could throw your tire out of round. You'll have to run the drill in reverse or the nut will loosen. Work very slowly and smoothly, and before long you'll have a perfectly round tire. This method also works well for removing the old rubber off of the rim before you put the new tire on it. You can also get a small performance gain by balancing your tires. Spin them slightly and then mark the side that comes down. This is the heavy side. Add weight exactly opposite of this point to bring them in balance, or try mounting your rims in a different position until you find one that's balanced. You can do your back tires in the same manner, but you will have to remove your drive shafts to get them to spin freely. Maintenance is very important to any successful racing team. Get a good supply of old paint brushes and toothbrushes to clean your parts. Keep your car clean and routinely check it for worn ball joints. We can check the condition of our transmissions by doing a free spin. This transmission is in fair to average condition. This particular transmission was run very hard for a season at 2 to 3 races a week, and it developed quite a bind. I cleaned the bind by taking the transmission apart and cleaning it thoroughly, including taking the bearings out and cleaning them. It's very important that you clean your bearings at regular intervals, or else they'll build up a lot of grit and it'll ruin them. Motor cleaner works very well for breaking up the grit and helping to remove it. After I cleaned the bearings and cleaned my transmission, I picked up 8 laps at the local racetrack. It really does make a difference. Foam tires tend to chunk out, especially on asphalt, and it's very important you fix them before these chunks get larger. We like to use Duro black plastic rubber or it can use many of the products found at hobby stores. Later, we'll show you how to take care of your motors. Winning usually doesn't come down to who spent the most money or who has the best car. It usually comes down to preparation. There's a wide variety of testing equipment available for RC car battery packs. And most beginners mistakenly think that you have to own this equipment to be competitive, but you don't. All you need to know are the secrets of electricity. Even if you can afford this equipment, it won't do you much good if you don't understand electricity, so now we'll discuss electrical basics. There are three fundamentals we will work with: voltage, amperage, and resistance. Voltage can be looked at as the amount of pressure in a circuit, amperage can be looked at as the amount of electricity in the circuit, and resistance is equal to electrical friction. We strongly suggest you invest in a good multimeter to read these three functions and learn how to use it. A decent multimeter will set you back $25 to $50 depending on its features. There's an extremely powerful formula we can utilize to find any one of these functions if we only know the other two, and it's called Ohm's law. It is stated as amperage equals voltage over resistance, with resistance stated in ohms. We can also algebraically rewrite it as voltage equals amperage times resistance, where resistance equals voltage divided by amperage. There are two types of circuits we will work with in chargers and battery packs. They're called parallel circuits and series circuits. In a parallel circuit, each item has its own path to positive and negative, and in a series, the electricity must travel through all items in its path. In a parallel circuit, batteries will provide more capacity but less voltage. In a series circuit, they'll have more voltage and less capacity. Most batteries come wired in series. The positive side of one cell will be wired to the negative side of the other. Now we'll show you how battery packs are rated for capacity. If a battery is rated at 1400 milliamp hours, this means it can sustain a current of 1400 milliamps or 1.4 amps for 1 hour. Furthermore, if we know the capacity and know how long it took to discharge, we can also figure how much amps we averaged. If we have a 1400 milliamp pack and we discharge it in 4 minutes, that means we averaged 21 amps discharge. Here we have two cells, a 1400 SCR and a 1700 SCE. The SCR has more voltage but a little less capacity, and the SCE has more capacity but a little less voltage. We strongly suggest you start out with SCR packs, especially in stock class. Now I'll show you how to charge your packs and maintain them for best performance. We check the quality of our packs by looking at two properties: capacity, or how long that pack runs, and voltage, or how much punch it will provide. There are many ways to test this. One is to buy an expensive battery tester, and the second we will show you now. You don't need to break your bank account to know the condition of your batteries. I'll show you how you can make a battery checker for under $6. You will need 8 through 16 automotive taillight bulbs. 8 better simulates stock motors, and 16 simulates modified. You'll also need 2 to 3 feet of heavy gauge wire so it doesn't overheat. We suggest a 14 to 16 gauge. And then you'll need some kind of connector or alligator clip to fit your pack. We will be using these light bulbs to discharge our battery packs at a high rate. And by timing the amount of time it takes our battery packs to reach a given voltage, we can compare our packs. We're going to start out by soldering all of the negative sides of the bulbs together. Oh, this is a difficult part. Solder together 2 banks of 4 and then connect them in this fashion. Then you'll want to connect together the terminals on the top of each bulb, and then take a small piece of wire and connect all of those together. Once you get the terminals connected, put a wire to the ground and then put on your alligator clips or connectors. When you connect the discharge bank, make sure you don't create a dead short, and be careful, the bulbs get very hot. Now we're ready to test the condition of our batteries. To do this, we're going to need the discharge bank we built earlier, a digital voltmeter. This one I picked up at Radio Shack on sale for about 15 bucks, and a digital stopwatch, and this one costs $7. And what we're going to be doing is hooking the battery pack up to this discharge bank with the voltmeter connected, and at every 30-second time increment we're going to be recording the volts. We're going to continue to do this until the voltage drops down to 0.9 volts per cell. Okay, we're off approximately 2 seconds, and that's very important to remember. So we'll add 2 seconds to it. Okay, right now we start out with 7.45 volts. Remember, at 5.4 we want to stop it. 6 we're looking at 554. What's happening now? Oop, we lost it. Shoot. Yeah, it happens awful quick, doesn't it? It just dumped. If you look at the discharge cells here, they've almost got nothing coming out. Here's our completed test of all of our 6-cell packs. If you notice, on the right side of the page, we've noted how long it took each pack to reach 5.4 volts. Notice that the worst pack we have is a minute down on the best. Since our non-automated charger doesn't regulate discharge amperage, it will tend to exaggerate the difference between packs slightly, but our comparison is still accurate. There are some tips we can use to maintain accuracy. Charge all of your packs in the same manner unless you are comparing charging methods. Warm up the discharger before each test with a spare battery pack or a power supply. And to compare packs, it's best to ignore the first and last 30 seconds of discharge. Since this discharger is unregulated, you won't be able to compare the numbers you get with other dischargers, but it does give you a very accurate comparison between packs. Get some of your friends together and compare all of your packs and try different charging methods. You'll learn really quick what makes a good battery pack and what doesn't. It's really quite easy to use this discharger once you put it together and try it, so go to it. There are two methods that allow us to easily determine when a pack has reached its charge: voltage and temperature. Voltage will increase gradually and then plateau right before the peak, and as it reaches peak charge, the voltage will drop quickly. Temperature works exactly opposite. It too will climb gradually, but as it reaches a full charge, the temperature will go up drastically. We can use either one of these methods to determine when our pack is charged. There are two types of chargers we will work with: the peak charger and the timer charger. The timer charger only approximates a full charge, while the peak charger actually measures when the voltage decreases and shuts off automatically. Peak charging is a much preferred method. You can obtain a full charge with a non-peak charger though. Here we have the same timer charger and we've hooked up a voltmeter to it. We're watching for the voltage drop that indicates when the pack is fully charged. As you can see, our voltage is at a plateau. It's starting to drop, and that's telling us we've hit a peak. We'll let it drop 5/100ths, and then we'll call it done. The pack is just getting slightly warm. That's just what we want to see. If you don't have access to a multimeter, you can use the temperature method to tell when your pack is charged. Starting with a pack at room temperature, monitor its temperature. When it reaches about 100 to 110 degrees, you've got a full charge. Be careful that you don't overcharge it. Out of all the packs we tested, we preferred the ones assembled with Sanyo 1400 SCR cells. The 1400 SCRs have a good compromise between voltage output and capacity, and they work very well in both stock and modified racing. You don't need to spend a lot of money on batteries to be competitive. The difference between high-buck, high-rated packs and inexpensive, low-rated packs is not that great, and often a pack that is rated high will lose that edge after a couple of runs. We do suggest that you buy matched packs though, and we've had very good luck with some budget brands. This is a Duratrax 1400 SCR that we picked up for $25.99, and we strongly suggest it. We do suggest that you do rewire these packs to make it easier to get at each individual cell for testing and to get a better connection between the two. We can fine-tune the power output of our cells by the charge rate we choose. A high charge rate will give us more voltage and a little less duration. We usually use this for stock motors where duration usually isn't a problem. And a low charge rate will give us less voltage and more duration. We might use this for modified racing or to make our cells last longer. There are three important summaries we can make about battery charging. Always peak charge your battery packs, discharge them completely after every run, and test your packs and cycle them. Battery technology is constantly changing, and the only way to keep up with this technology is to test your own packs. A motor's power, efficiency, and reliability are very important. While your life may not depend on your engine as much as the pilot of a Harrier jump jet, your racing success certainly does. We did extensive testing of new motors and motors ran by various types of racers and came to the conclusion that most are better off taking care of their equipment than dreaming of motors they don't have. The most important step is keeping your motor clean, and the second step is knowing when your motor is worn out. If you keep your motor clean, you'll get a lot of wear out of them. When they do wear out, it'll become pretty obvious if you're keeping good records of how your car is running. If you own a lot of motors and don't have the time to track test them, you can have them dyno tested. Dynos are becoming a pretty widespread piece of equipment, and most dyno owners will test your motors for a fairly reasonable price. Maintenance isn't that difficult. We suggest that you buy a good can of motor spray and a collection of commutator sticks and use them to clean your motor often. We suggest that you clean your motor after every 5 to 6 runs on asphalt and after every 2 to 3 on dirt, and more if the conditions are really dusty. Replace your brushes when they have worn to 3/4 of their original height or have become burnt or pitted. Motor selection can be more involved. Stock motors are fairly equal, but small differences can exist, primarily in the manufacturer's choice of brushes and spring tension, and some have better quality control. The best way to choose a stock motor is to check what the local hot shots are running, but remember, by rule they should not cost more than $25. Choosing modified motors is extremely dependent on the driver. Most amateurs have a tendency to choose too powerful of a motor. Remember, if you can't control it, it's not doing any good. Motors are rated by their number and type of winds. I run an 18 double in my truck. The 18 signifies how many turns of wire on the armature of the motor. Less winds means bigger wire and more power. The double signifies a type of wind. The lower number types produce their power lower in the RPM range compared to a motor of the same number of turns with a higher type. A large amount of winds with a large type, like a 19 quad, is good for a track that is slippery but large, and a small number of winds in a single configuration is good for small sticky tracks, like a 9 single for drag racing. A motor's timing also affects its power output. Generally, more timing will give you more power, but at the cost of a great loss in efficiency. We suggest that if you need more power, you go to a more powerful motor instead of using timing to make up for it. Gearing works hand in hand with motor selection. With stock motors, we use gearing to put the power band where we want it. With modified motors, we also use gearing to fine-tune run time for each particular track. If you meet run time and need more speed, use the discharger and timer to see how much power was left in the pack. If you've got 30 seconds or more of power left, you'll want to gear your motor harder to take advantage of it. When figuring gear ratios to compare with other racers and record for further use, we suggest you figure tire size into the equation. We figure ratios by dividing the number of teeth on the spur gear by the number of teeth on the pinion, then multiply this by the transmission ratio. This gives us our final drive ratio. Measure tire circumference with a piece of string and a ruler, then divide it by final drive ratio, and this gives you how far the car moves for every revolution of the motor. This will allow us to compare ratios between cars with different sized tires. This is really important when using foam tires. We want to avoid electrical resistance all we can in our car's electrical system. One of the best ways to do this is to get rid of all the connectors. We suggest that if you have access to electricity or a portable soldering iron, that you get rid of all the connectors in your car and hardwire everything by soldering everything direct. If you don't do this, you'll definitely want to invest in some high quality connectors. One of the best places to go for free advice is your local hobby shop. Find a hobby shop that specializes in RC cars, and a lot of times they'll be able to give you a very good idea of what kind of tire and gearing works well in your area. They also are a good place to go for a quick supply of parts, and this is very important in racing. There's nothing more frustrating than needing a part and not being able to get it quick. Be sure to support your local hobby shop. If your hobby shop is out of business, your track will be soon to follow. The quickest way to learn racing is to do it, and most tracks are very happy to help the new racer along. Without racers, they wouldn't have a track. You don't want to compete against the all-out pros when you're starting, so look for a class geared to the novice or amateur racer. Stock racing is the place to start. Our local tracks break it into 2 classes, stock or novice, and pro stock. You will start in stock class until you win a few times or break a certain amount of laps. Then you'll be put in the pro class. Oval racing is usually a lot more equipment intensive than off-road, but many racers have done very well in transmission stock class, which are converted off-road cars with minimal equipment. If you want to race oval on a budget, this is the class to be in. To get started cheaply, try using model airplane fuel tubing on the insides of your shock absorbers on the shock shaft to lower it out, and increase your front dampening by using 90 weight oil or filling up some of the holes in your shock piston. This method has the added benefit of being easy to convert back when you desire. If you want to go all out, try using shorter shock absorbers or remounting the ones you have higher on your shock tower. Transmission stock action in our area is extremely hot. and one of the drivers in this class really impressed us with his ability to win on a budget. Not only did he win, he was one of the most consistent winners in this class we ever ran against, and he didn't do it with a wad of money. Watching him gave us great encouragement, and you could say he was our team idol. We'll tell you his secret: intense preparation and good driving skills. He practices his driving often, and his driving is almost infallible, and he takes extreme care of his equipment. If you find a racer that impresses you and runs on a budget, try to get to know them. Offer to do them a favor if they'll help you out. They'll appreciate your desire to learn and might even put you on their team. This guy joined ours. We wanted to avoid coming right out and telling you exact setups for your car. Since technology changes so fast, anything car specific is bound to change. Hopefully you can use the racing science taught in this tape to develop your own setups. We promise you, get out to the track and utilize some of the tips we gave you, and you too will run with the big dogs. We did. One of the most enjoyable ways to compete on the budget level is to form a team. We started our team with 2 experienced drivers that had raced for a few seasons, and a handful of novices. The novices weren't sure that they'd be able to compete in a major race though on budget equipment, so the 2 experienced drivers set out to prove it to them. We went to a local race that was known to be quite competitive, and a lot of the top drivers were supposed to be there. The novice drivers didn't really think we had too much of a chance. They didn't take it too seriously. We brought a new team car that I had just bought and set up with some of the equipment that I had left over from my last car. And Will used the JRX too that was getting pretty close to worn out. Set them up the way we'd been running them in the parking lot. Didn't expect really good success. But to the surprise of everyone, we took first place. This convinced the novice racers on our team that they too could attempt to run at a racetrack. A general thrash ensued, and we got our cars ready for the soonest race. It was well known that the local hobby shop owner was the guy to look out for, and in practice I was keeping up with him. Got the rest of the team quite worked up, and everyone was really excited about the race. Justin's car was running really well, but quite a rivalry developed between him and Will. When tempers flared, and this was the result. But Will wasn't about to let him get away with it. He tried it again and failed. Justin let this set a theme in the race. This was his first organized race of this caliber, and he got a little over-aggressive. Qualifying went really well. My car was gripping good, and I qualified third, behind the hobby shop owner and behind Tim, who later became a team member. Everyone's qualifying positions were posted and a general thrash ensued. Will was more concerned with revenge. Scott was still trying to figure out how to drive. This was his first ever race. Justin wanted to get ahead of Will so Will couldn't get revenge. And Tim was his usual calm, cool, and collected self. Unfortunately, he was racing in my class. I really had my work cut out for me. Driver's meeting was held, and the computer was ready for the next race. The button pressers knew that it was going to be a very close one, and the tension was on. Will got a very good start, and it looked like it was going to be a very close race between him, the habitual winner of the class, and Justin. Unfortunately, he was taken out. It was a close enough race that that one hit pretty much cost him. Justin must have been watching, because next time that driver came around, he got out of the way. Will ended up taking third place, and Justin had second. Our race came to a very good start, but unfortunately I was bumped into the wall. I knew I was in trouble because my car started to handle erratically. And sure enough, on the next corner, my battery mount came loose. While the track marshal was fiddling with my car, Ed was running away with the race. Even though I had no chance of winning it now, I got my point across to the novice racers on our team. You could come to the track with budget equipment, have a lot of fun, and have a very decent possibility of winning. We were really hooked on the racing bug now, and we wanted to be really competitive, so we went after the top 2 racers that won and made them team members. Their experience really made us a force to be reckoned with.